So, good evening. Welcome again to Free to Heal, where we are having conversations about incarceration and healing the trauma of those that were formerly incarcerated as well as their loved ones. Those of you who are watching on YouTube, we ask you to subscribe, view our videos, pass it along, because the conversation is about the healing. We will be discussing those things that happen during incarceration, but the primary goal is to talk about how we heal from those particular events. Tonight, we're extremely blessed to have with us Miss Yvonne Trice, and I'm going to really allow her to introduce herself and tell her story and what her mission, what her purpose became as the result of her experience. So, welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome. I know.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Yvonne Trice. My organization is A Mother's Voice. I didn't get that because I just wanted a name. I got that through my pain and my trauma of losing my son. I was really, really angry when it happened, and I blamed a lot of people. And as I walked through the journey, the night that it happened, there was no one there for me. I lost my voice for like 90 days.
And you mean your physical voice?
I lost my physical voice for 90 days. I couldn't talk. And I was like, God, if you do anything, if you give me back my voice, I'll use it to benefit people. I'm not sitting here saying that pain does not hurt. I still hurt. I'm still broken, but I'm gracefully broken. Meaning that when I say gracefully broken, I mean all my broken pieces are coming together from a tragedy that not just affected me, but affected my whole family for generations to come. So when I realized how broken I was, there's a story in the Bible where they talk about she's Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi. I was Naomi. I want these mothers to know that I was Naomi. I was angry. I was bitter. And I was blaming people, and I was like, how do I take responsibility for my son being in the street, being a product of that same environment that took him? So I was like, God, I don't know how I'm gonna do it. He said, you're gonna walk as Naomi for a minute, because I got a healing I have to do with you. I have to take you through the process. It's a pruning and a plucking process. It's like when you have a garden and you want to get the weeds out the way. I'm not trying to be funny. I got to be real and raw with this because it's important. Mothers are listening that don't have a voice. You start pulling and plucking, and as you pull and pluck, there's some thorns that you're going to meet that you had a part to play in too. Take my full responsibility for the relationship I allowed my son to have, not being a part of it, but seeing it and not acknowledging it. And just going over and over, and then as he grew and started going into these juvenile hall and state prison and the county jail, I was like, always there, always there. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be always there, but you need to give a word to let him know that there's accountability, wrong or right. You need to give that word. I'm not coming here to beat the mothers up. I'm just telling you my story, hoping that it will educate you, because I knew from the hat, I knew from the feet, I knew from the money, I knew from the way he carried himself, and I was like, even though it didn't come in my house, it still was a part of what I seen.
So I want to stop you right there and say this, and ask this question this way. When you say that, I want you to tell us a little bit about your son, and the thing, because you mentioned the hat, the way the hat was worn, different things, and what did that say to you, or what did you ultimately find out all of those things meant that you didn't know at the time? When you look back on it now in hindsight and realize what's going on, what was it that it pointed to?
It pointed to that it was a life of the street. It pointed to that he was in a gang. He was in a gang.
And at the time when it was all going on, you didn't know the gang side of it. You knew that there were gangs in your neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Right? But you didn't know that, for example, you and I talked one time, and this was so critical, it's such a thing, and she talked about the feet, the way that people position their feet when in a photograph or when they're standing or those things, there's a way that gang members position their feet. Is it that L, and they always going out, this is, and in fact, even now, if I see some folks in a picture and they put them feet like that, hey, fix those feet like that. I'm vicious about it because I know what it points to.
Yeah.
But at the time, you didn't know that that's what all of those, you saw the things, but you didn't know that that's what that meant. So you could see the changes, but you didn't necessarily know at that time what it meant. And because you didn't know that, tell me what his journey was, what your son's journey was, from the time when you look back on it now, him being involved, what was that journey like that ultimately led you to the painful part, or the most painful part was losing him?
The journey that I saw that I really recognized, because like I said, I didn't say, but I had him at an early age.
Okay.
So at the early age I had him, I was 15.
Okay.
And I was 15 when I had him. And I really didn't know anything about raising a child, but I was a child myself. So that journey affected my son and myself when I think about it. And when I look, he's not I know people might not understand this, but this is my story. He wasn't my son first. He was my brother and my friend. And as I grew older in age, I took the responsibility of saying, now he's my son. So when I tell people I lost 3 people, they look and say he was only one. No, he was 3 different people, because first of all, I was a minor, young, and didn't have the responsibility of what I needed to give him to grow. So now when I look at it, it's like, okay, you look at those barriers, you look at life, and you say, even though we're young mothers and we decide that we want to keep our children, I'm not saying that's disrespectful, this is my story. So with that being said, I realized that I couldn't even begin to be the parent that he needed. And then I myself was living in an area where it was gang infested. So his mentality was not that at first. His mentality, he went to school, he had special gifts to where they would tell me that he could go all of these different schools. But no matter, I was not laughing, but in the same mind as when Bernard was talking, I'm that mother. I took him through every school. I was with the principals. They was throwing him out of places, from one place to another. And I'm like, Lord, if you just give me a chance. I started naming him the prodigal son. I'm not playing, because it was like everywhere I went, he would start there, but he wouldn't finish. And I remember just looking at him.
And so for everybody that may be listening that may not understand what that means, we were having a conversation earlier about the fact that gang involvement dictates where you can go to school. It dictates where you can live. And mind you, it may be forced upon you simply by living in a geographical location. And then there's, it's gonna dictate who you can date, where you can go to the grocery store, where you can go to school. And then at a certain level, once people become actively involved, and they get kicked out of enough schools, their reputation tends to precede them. So when they're going to the next school, they go in on probation. And the least thing will make them get kicked out again. So in fact, you wind up going from school to school to school, and the mothers, the parents don't know why all of this is happening. They keep asking, boy, what's wrong with you? What's going on with you? Why are you doing it?
And the tears, it's the tears. It's
right.
The tears of being stressed out. It's the tears of saying, I don't know, how did I affect him? And I remember just crying, and I was sitting on my couch because my son, I tried to get like boys help, like counseling and all these kind of things. And every time I would go there, they would say, oh, he had to do this first. And I was like, so he got to go to jail first?
Right. So I'm so sorry I cut you off, but that's really an important thing. People don't understand that oftentimes there's really no assistance to help you to prevent the ultimate worst. It's once they have to get in trouble. There are even now programs that the city runs and the government runs, that like the Los Angeles Grid program. in order for youth to be involved, they have to have already had, in a lot of instances, already had an arrest and contact with police and be in a dangerous situation where if they provided things ahead of time, that it could actually prevent some of these things.
Absolutely.
So, and I want to ask you this. Through the course of your son's life, how much time did he spend incarcerated?
25 years.
So 25 years, and how old was he when he passed?
39.
Okay? So the better part of his life, he spent incarcerated. And that's in and out, and his mom trying to be there to go through all these different prisons and support him and all of these things.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, because when he came into your house, and I can say when I read this about you, is that your mother was never just letting you go.
No.
And you talked to me about that.
No.
Go ahead and talk to me about that.
No, he knew. He knew. Like if he wanted me to pick him up from somewhere and he had on the colors that he was where he was from, oh no, take your shoes off, your shirt off. He said, I'm gonna be naked. I don't care, you're gonna be naked. That's not what you're gonna do. You can't come in my house like that. So most of the time when you see, I can speak for my son, because I'm telling my story, because other people have their story. When I used to see him, and I used to, like, one time I pulled up on him, I never forget, I was going to my mom's house or somebody, and I looked and I said, that look like my son's car. So I pulled it up and they were snatching, just, I was like, what are you doing? What's going on? He was like, no. This is gonna take you two places, to death or jail. That's when I start crying. Because my son told me those people were his friends.
And I want you to explain too about that, talk about that if you would for me, sir. Just briefly about, with your mom, because she wasn't playing.
Yeah, my mom, she was never accepting of it, but I just think that she was trying to understand it. She was trying to, and I think, well, my mom came up in the Black Panther days and stuff like that, so she was always a part of going to go vote and being in contact with the watch commander at the police station and doing events at the park, having me in baseball and stuff like that. And coming out of elementary, that's when I started detouring, and she was trying to catch it then, especially starting junior high school,
right.
And starting to fight at schools, she started to get, what's going on, and by my brother having already been through the gangs and stuff, and extended family members, so she had an idea what it was, but she just wasn't accepting the fact that I was going towards that. But at the same time, she was a single parent, and with taking care of bills, so she wasn't she couldn't watch me 24/7, and it was just the resources just wasn't there for her for what she wanted for me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like nowadays, there's resources there that the parents don't take advantage of.
Right.
But she didn't have the resources. The closest resources we had was Dare to Dare program, but we wasn't talking about drugs. We was talking about guns.
Hello. Which is
We
way
wasn't talking
different.
about guns.
Right. Yeah. Drugs was the least of your issues.
Drugs was the least of our issue. We was selling drugs. We wasn't there. We wasn't using drugs. We was selling the drugs and getting guns from them. So that was our dare. So she understood that and was trying her best to try to keep me from that. Like she would I never was able to, easily come in with guns or whatever. I try to hide it or whatever, but I try to be bold and come in with them and stuff like that. And
she wasn't having
jump
it.
right up, like what you doing, ready to take off and stuff like that. And she would block the door, like where you going? You gonna eat? You gonna sit down there and have dinner? You ain't going outside today, But and looking back at things, I was a teenager, so she had to right there. I wasn't even 18 yet,
Right.
I just still thought that I was grown.
You
but
thought
I
you were
wasn't
grown, right? And that's the interesting thing about it is there are those elements when particularly when a male gets into puberty, where they begin to think and smell themselves, as my mama used to say, and they feel like they're grown, but they're not actually grown yet. So there's and particularly as a mother raising a son, trying to navigate that piece of it, where allowing them to grow up while at the same time keeping control over what's going on. And one of the things that I think was interesting in understanding how many different schools that they have to go to, how many to try to keep them in school, to try to get them to at least get a high school diploma, how potentially dangerous it can be for a young man or a young woman, and particularly nowadays, even more so with young women than it used to be.
Yeah.
That's a vicious cycle too. Now, how dangerous it can be if they're already affiliated to go from place to place, just to be in a location, and how much retaliation could potentially get innocent people killed because there was no necessarily looking at it and say who specifically did this. When I started doing hardcore gang intervention, that was our focus, was wait a minute, before you retaliate, let us get some information. Let us confirm what happened so that if there's something that's going to go down, let it be the person who did it, because oftentimes what began to happen was innocent people were killed on a regular basis. And so when we started doing gang intervention really heavily, the notion was, let us try to make sure that this is what actually happened, because the other thing about it that we found out is that law enforcement used to kick off stuff too. When it got too quiet, they would kick off stuff.
Yeah.
So we had to navigate and find out what exactly was going on before, so that we could prevent some of that retaliation. But back to your story with your son, you did everything you could, and talk to me about when you finally were able to acknowledge to yourself that, oh my gosh, he's in a gang, and what it was like from there.
I'm taking a breather for a minute because he's not here, so it's like everything is coming to me right here. I remember coming home like after school, putting my son in these schools, calling the boys club, calling everybody I could call. I remember my son saying, I was sitting there and I came home from work. Then I was like, I don't know what else to do. I just don't know what else to do. I said, I'm your family. I said, I'm your family. Don't you see what you're doing? Don't you see what you're doing? Don't you see what you're doing? And I remember my son being in like his teens, and I was like, he said, they're my family. I was like, they're your family. I'm your family. I'm the one that go to these courts. I'm the one that talk to these police officers. I'm the one sitting in these juvenile halls. I'm sitting here, I'm praying, I'm crying, I don't know what else to do. And when my son said that, I tried to send my son up north. I tried to send my son everywhere but the city that he lost his life in. So he was sitting up like strong. I really looked at my kid and realized the street he had made that promise to the street, and he was not changing for anything.
And how old was he at that point?
He was a teenager. He was like maybe 16 or something like that.
Yeah, because by that time, by 16, if they've been involved for a minute, if they've been involved by 16, right, that's way entrenched. It is literally more important to them than their natural families.
Yeah, it was one of the, other than some of the worstest days I had in my life, that was the worst. Because I was like, I saw the shape of the feet. I knew he was like, to me, my son was 16, but I felt like when in that life, he was really like 25.
Right.
That's what I saw.
It's so surreal. It's so real to hear that, It's so surreal to hear that, because it's just reminiscent of my mom, and her saying, those same words, and her favorite tone was "Watch Your Step" by Anita Baker. you know, like what you doing? You know, you better watch your step. You know, you fall and hurt yourself one day, you know, but she would sit, you know, what do you see what you're doing? Do you see what you're doing yet? You know, and always try to tell me like, this is your family, that's not your family, you know, this is your family, you know, but I you know, at that point, at 16, man, you know, I had already took a crew to Oklahoma, you know, I already had been, you know, heavily involved in
the life.
activities, in the life, you know, I was three years in, you know, and so I wasn't gonna stop, you know, I wasn't gonna stop, like, there was nothing, you know, that she could've did to stop me, but what could've stopped me, and it wasn't even my mother, what could've stopped me was one of the people that I was looking up to actually set me down and telling me that at the end of the day, if you get caught for what we doing out here, you're gonna be in there with the same dudes from that area. Then give me the opportunity to say, wait a minute, 2 + 2 is 4.
Absolutely.
So if we doing all this right now, and I go there, but I'm gonna be spending the rest of my life there, and you telling me that we cool there?
Then why are we doing this here? It doesn't make any sense.
It ain't making sense. So,
right.
So the information was missing.
Yes.
So my mother could have did everything in the book, but if the streets wasn't telling me that this what it is, I wasn't gonna listen. I listened to the people in the streets before I listened to my mother.
Mm-hmm. Does that give you any relief? Because he is your son at this point, right? He lived that, so he's saying it wouldn't have mattered. There's not very much of anything you could have done or said, particularly by 16, that was going to affect what he was doing at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to make sure you heard that, because as mothers, we feel, particularly when the dads are not in it, we feel like we're responsible for things. Yes, sir.
That's the only thing I remember my mom telling me was, as long as I was in jail, she knew where I was at.
Wow.
You know, because I was incarcerated all the time. But my mother loved the heck out of me.
Me too.
And never missed visiting
Me too.
in LA, you know, as I was growing up, you know. I'm the only one I know did 3 years in juvenile hall in one whack. You know, everybody else got out in 30, 60 days.
Right.
But they kept me in the hole the last 2 years. And, but I was nuts. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't know. I was nuttier than a fruitcake and hated everybody. I think the only ones who was safe around me personally was family. Anybody beyond family?
I think in some instances, like, parents don't have the means to just up and move, right?
Correct.
So I believe if my mom had the means to move me out of the state somewhere to get a fresh start, she probably would have did that. Yeah. You know, but it was a matter of me willing to go, because I probably would have ran away. You know, thinking back on how I was back then,
where you were mentally,
ran away, as opposed to, you know what, we moving, we finna move to
anywhere. It
wherever,
wouldn't matter,
out
right?
of the state, you know.
And so
I can't go. I can't go out. I can't lead a hood. I can't do that.
But I wanna go back to Yvonne really quick and talk about, so once he starts with all this incarceration and all of the visits and all of the things that you did, then what? Because that's not the end of your story.
No, it's not. Once I started doing this, the routine of going to the jail was like a part of my life. It would be my Sundays, it would be my Saturdays, it would be my night prayer. It was a lot. So it affected my other sons too, and my daughter. Because it just wasn't, that was my first son. I have 5 sons and 1 daughter. So I took from them to protect him. And they just fell along behind me, because I'm carrying the burden of trying to save my son. And at the time, I realized when he told me that they were his friends, I had to get on my knees and really realize I gotta just walk through this back, because I have 4 other sons. So when I walked through it, I would just tell him, look, I'm visiting you is one thing, but I got some words for you. So I start giving him words, start giving him guidance, start giving him everything, and I apologized publicly to him when I went to see him, to let him know that I really didn't know no better, but I did see what I saw. I just didn't see your reactions in the streets. I heard your name in the streets, but I didn't see your action. And this is important, mothers. I'm gonna say it again. I heard your name in the streets. I didn't see your reactions because they never entered my door. I learned that when you know that, all you sit and say, I don't know when, I don't know where, I don't know how, but it's 2 ways you're gonna go: prison or death. There's not another key.
Yeah, there's never been a success. In other words, I always used to say it this way: there's no retirement plan for a gangster.
No.
There's no 401k. No. There's no retirement plan for a gangster. The retirement is either prison or death, and that's the reality of the circumstance. And the fact that, as you were talking a minute ago, there's no, even when you get some people from the gang help them when they're in prison, there's going to be a very small number of people that do that.
Yeah.
And so honestly, what winds up happening is when you get incarcerated, it is the family that is ultimately going to support you. And they're the ones who are going to keep you eating. They're the ones who are going to do the visits, as it were. It's not going to be the homeboys or homegirls. In a lot of instances, they can't even come visit because they're on paperwork.
Yeah.
They got their own cases. So even if they wanted to, they can't. And you wind up in a situation where only your family can really
You never see them dudes again. If you got enough time, you never see them dudes again. Like, you know, some dudes I never got to see again.
Mm-hmm.
You spoke something very valuable to me just a minute ago when you was talking about jail, and you were saying your mother was saying what she was saying. I kept remembering saying, after I realized that was what he wanted to do and there was nothing I could do but continue to pray for him, I used to tell him, you know what, at this point, I'm just gonna keep praying and praying. And that's when I used to call him, you're a soldier for the streets, but my prayer for you is the soldier for the Lord. And he used to call me at night and tell me he saw these demons, which means to me, not the monsters, but whatever life you lived that I didn't know about. So I would tell him, you and God gonna have to handle that. Because see, what happens is, so I used to pray that he would be by himself. But I know God manifests a lot of the prayers for me because I was crying all the time. I had swollen eyes, and I used to say, well, your mother said hers differently. I used to sleep at night when I realized he was that life when he was locked up. It would let me go to bed at night because I wouldn't have to worry about somebody calling me. I used to run the sheets. People would die. My husband would say, you're not going. I go, oh, but I am. And I would get there and it wouldn't be his face. It'd be somebody else's child.
You know, I always wondered, because as long as I was incarcerated, during my time in prison, I'd done some bad things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, mostly at the beginning, because you had to kind of prove yourself. But I have saved, I know, 3 people who was going to get wiped. Yeah. And not by having some gang behind me or anything like that. I stopped them from killing them. And I always thought that sometimes in my mind, maybe that's where the Lord wanted me to be.
There are times and there are circumstances, you know, I will say this, no, I can't think of anybody that would say that incarceration is a blessing. I can't think of anybody. However, I do know of a circumstance where and I've had women tell me this in CIW, that the incarceration saved them because they were no longer able to get high at the rate that they were getting high. Not that they can't get high, because there's as much drugs and dope in the prison as it is on the street. One time I was in there on a Saturday working, and they had some good weed, and I was offended. I was offended. I ain't gonna lie, I was offended as hell. How y'all smoking? Y'all got that ooh wee up in here. I was bad as I could be, right? So anyway, but and then this is a story that has always been phenomenal to me. I have a class going on, and this lady's in the class, and she has an unusual last name, and she tells, and we're discussing how sometimes there's a parable that says we don't know if it's a good thing or it's a bad thing. You look at a circumstance and you think, okay, well, he got arrested, but like you said, you knew that he was safe. At least he was incarcerated. You didn't have to wonder whether they were going to knock on the door and say he was under the sheet, or you didn't have to run to the sheet anymore, right? You didn't have to run to crime scenes to pull up the sheet to see if that was your son. So there was a part of that was actually a relief for you, like with your mom. Well, this lady had been praying. She had a heroin habit for many, many years. And when her kids were young, their parents, their family took her children from her. And as she got clean, she was clean for like 6 years. She had even become a counselor, a drug counselor. And she said one day she went down an alley she knew she should never have been in. Now, I don't know whether that was metaphorically or whether it was physically. But she did, and she wound up in CIW at the time that I met her in my class, and she was doing the longest stretch that she had ever done in prison. And she indicated to me that one of her prayers for all of those years was that she wanted to find her children. And she said that she was in the med line, and they called her last name, and 2 people stood up, her and another lady. And it turned out to be her. And she went and got her meds, and when she came back, she went to the young lady and she said, well, we have the same last name, that's, what's your first name? And the young lady told her first name, and she said, do you have a sister named, let's call her Betty, do you have a sister named Betty? And she said, yes. She said, I'm your mother. So she met her daughter in prison, and her reason for bringing it up at that moment was to say that prison for her was not a good thing, but it was where she went and she found her daughter. So for her, was it a bad thing or a good thing? It's hard to say, but that's where she found her daughter. So sometimes, to your point, it may be that you need to be there to save a life, to find a life, any of those things. So we don't always know what it is, but I have had too many people tell me the life I was living. Oh yeah,
it was a blessing and a curse. Like for me, I believe that it was a blessing because I needed to know the truth, because I wasn't gonna stop, and I'd already been shot. So I was already I was going deeper and deeper and deeper into that. But although it was hell going through the process of what they did to me, in going through what I went through there, I realized that it was saving my life, even though my life was in danger being in prison, because you can get killed at any moment. So it's all a matter of I have to make it back. But it gave me the truth. It gave me the chance to see.
Gave you just enough distance from the business
to be
able
to
see
no
it from
that I was coming back.
Yes.
So I had to really sit and look at things to see
to,
why I'm here. Why am I here? And I was there because I needed to know the truth. You needed to see the truth. You needed to live the truth.
Yes.
You need to know that these people right here, who your assignment was to go kill, these are the same people right here that have to be with you every day, talking to you, walking with you, sharing numbers and everything. So I had to see that, because I would have never thought that it existed like that. I never thought that I would be having conversations or camaraderie with a rolling 60, being where, from Trice. So seeing that and experiencing that, for me, in the maturity and thinking back on the fight that my mother took on, because it's a battle, and the thing is that she had lost that battle when
Yeah.
I left, when I was
Yeah.
arrested, and she had that stroke. She lost that battle, but she won the war because I got to see,
Yes.
and I made it back in time so that she can see
That you
that
understood
I got
now.
to see.
Absolutely. and it does matter because, go ahead.
I wanted to say this. Everybody was just saying like how it affected them, and when I looked from my mother's point from how I saw it, was that he was running fast, like always out there, you know, living life. So my prayer was, God protect him, and I don't know where you're gonna put him, because your words are manifestation. I don't know where you're gonna put him and how you're gonna put him, but I'm in a place where I'm having anxiety. I'm in a place where it's just so out of control. So when he would go to prison for me as a mother, because I couldn't chase the streets at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't know what girl house he was at. I didn't even know if the girl didn't like him, and it was a setup. So my whole thing was, whew, I can breathe. Even when it got ready for him to come home, I was terrified for him coming home, because I knew that right there, even if he had to fight, you know, because he fought on the streets, or he did whatever he did on the streets. So I was like, at least I can get this 8 hours, because nobody knows unless you have that experience. The death of a son, to violence, even if it was suicide or however somebody, first of all, however somebody dies, it's a tragedy. But when you know there's bullets that killed that person or something like that, and he was your son or he was your family member, it's shocking, because the bottom line is, I didn't want to see the bullets. I'd rather he had to fight than the bullets. So when I look at that from a mother's point of view, talking about my story, I can't speak for any other mother. I can just only tell my story, and that was to where, I could rest. He gonna beat up somebody, but I'm gonna be cool. He gonna fight with somebody, I'm gonna see him, and he gonna have red knuckles or a black eye or anything. But to know he died was different. So I used to always say, God, you know what? He running around, but get your son.
Okay.
And he would end up not that I wanted him to be there, but that's where he would get to spend time with him and his own conscience, him and his own self. So
now,
yeah.
And now you fast forward, and so the last time that he came home.
The last time he came home, he was home all but 90 days. That was the worst day of my life. It's crazy, because my life was bittersweet then, because I had a son that was getting married, a baby that was being born, and a son that was gonna die. So my son came home in May. My birthday was in June. His birthday was in July, and he died in August. I lost the ability to think about anything, because I didn't know what it was to lose a child. So devastating, gunned down in the back of a barbershop on a Friday day. I didn't care what he did or what he didn't do. The gun down my life was so silent, I went to speak and I couldn't talk. I couldn't talk. There was nothing I could say. I kept trying to make words come up, and my voice just shut down like that. And I was like, out of all my prayers, out of everything that I had been doing, I can't talk. So that whole 90 days, I went and made sure that I didn't do anything crazy. I went, talked to people, fed people, marched like the normal people do. You know, they march with your sign saying your baby, you lost your baby. You know, going up and down the street, and then walking to light the candles. But I remember this right here. I remember when he died that day, the cameras was flashing. I'm still on YouTube right now today. I thank God for that right now today. I'm gonna tell you why. The cameras was flashing, and I remember what God had gave me. The whole time my son Monte Russell was living on this earth, I told God to, like I told you, he was a soldier for the streets. Lord, just give me a prodigal son that returned home. So before he died, in those 90 days, he was going to school, he was going to work, he had visitations of his children, he was in church on every Sunday. If he got drunk on Saturday, he was sitting in church on Sunday. So it is funny how life is. You may not get it just the way you want it, but I have some shoes. I have that the prodigal son came home. I have that I do a ministry with mothers, and I believe in telling the truth. And my truth is his life was the streets first, and then he changed his life during the process. And what God gave me in the end was a blessing and a message. And the message was the walk, the talk, the hat, the shoes, the face I can kiss, and my voice back.
And it's interesting because all of the things that you went through and all of that leading up to your son being deceased, but now you get to help other people through the process. But one of the things that you said I think is really vital, and that is you decided to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Because what tends to happen, and I know so many people are probably going to be offended when I say this, but one of the things that happens when people die is that they make them out to be angels, as if he was never involved in nothing, he wasn't doing nothing, and miss me, okay? Right? And nobody deserves to be gunned down and die.
No.
I'm not saying that. What I am saying is, I believe that because you were willing to tell yourself the truth, because I want to say this, I don't think it's important to tell other people the truth.
Starts with me.
I think it's important to tell yourself the truth, because I just have known too many mothers who have lost their children to gang violence. And the ones who suffer the worst are the ones who don't want to acknowledge that their children were involved, and that because of involvement, it led to their death. They're the ones that I have found that suffer the most. And again, I say, I don't think it's necessary to tell the world. Just acknowledge it to yourself. Don't lie to yourself, because once you lie, when you're lying to yourself, you can't heal. There's no way, just as I learned from the most painful relationship that I ever had, where I literally was on the brink of insanity.
Yeah.
I thought, if I just check out mentally, at least I won't be in any more pain. But it wasn't until I started to look at my own participation in the things that I was doing that I was able to heal. As long as I looked at what he did to me, I couldn't heal. So understanding and being honest with yourself as mothers or any of people of murdered children, being honest about who your children were, I think is very helpful. I think it will help to heal. And while I'm there, I want to stop and say this too. Fathers mourn the loss of their children just like mothers. Oftentimes, and more often than not, I find that people don't acknowledge the father's pain. They run to the mother, but they don't run to the father. They don't go to him and check on him 6 weeks after the funeral. They don't go ask him anything. They don't think that it matters to him, but it does. Fathers grieve for their children just like mothers grieve for their children. And so it's important, and I just would encourage anybody listening to when children die, please acknowledge the father's losses as well. Yes, you wanted to say something.
I just wanted to say that along with you, a lot of people don't realize how it impacts the siblings too.
I was just gonna say.
Like, my brother died of gang violence as well, and like, siblings fight all the time, and you never think that you're not gonna see your relative the next day. And like, it just so happened before my brother got murdered, we did get into a fight, but me and my brother are 3 years apart, so it's like, we always butt heads, we're always at odds, you know, cause I feel like I'm the oldest, but he actually is the oldest, but I feel like I'm the, you know, so it's like, you know, you go back and forth. And like, before he had dropped me off at college, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna finish because you didn't finish, and da-da-da, you know, we're in competition and stuff. And we was arguing, and then right before he passed, which was a week after his birthday. We was planning a birthday party together and stuff, and it just so happened it was a good conversation, a long conversation actually. And it's so funny because a lot of people say that God have a way of positioning things, and I always say that when people lose their loved ones, it's always multiple people who lose. Like when my brother got killed, 3 men lost their lives. The 2 people who were the shooters, and my brother who was actually kind of innocent. So it sucks, and a lot of times when these people are dying, I'm not going to say that gang violence isn't something that we're products of, but sometimes the people are innocent. Sometimes it's the people that we grew up, like if you grow up in the hood, just because you raised in the hood don't mean you're from the hood.
That's right.
It sucks. It really sucks in reality, because just because I grew up in the hood don't mean I bang, don't mean I'm from that part. I just grew up there, and sometimes you really don't have a choice, or sometimes you can't handle that. All your friends, we in the car together, these 3 are from that hood. I'm just so happen to be the one that's not, and you rolling with those people. You look like a duck, walk like a duck, it's a duck. So like, so many people lose their lives that way too, and that doesn't get publicized a lot, and the news portray how they want to portray it, and these are things that need to be talked about, I just feel like, and a lot of people lose when people lose their lives, and it doesn't get spoken up on enough. Like, yes, mothers mourn, fathers mourn, siblings mourn, but it's actually humans losing their life, and no life deserves to be lost.
And you know what, one of the things, and I'm gonna let you go right after this, but one of the things too, when you talked about the 2 people, you said 3 people lost their lives. You're talking about the 2 shooters. Are they incarcerated or did they die also?
So actually, this is actually all over the news. It's called the Palos Verdes shooting. Cameron Terrell, he was a white male driving. My brother's name is Justin Holmes. He was gunned down. They thought he was from A-Trade. My brother never gangbanged a day in his life. We just grew up in that neighborhood. And the 2 young boys, I think they was under the age of 18. Cameron Terrell was the only one that was 18. He was the driver, the getaway driver, and he was from 90s.
Okay.
And the 2 boys, they are incarcerated.
Okay.
But one of them are getting out because he said his gun jammed, and I just had to do a witness statement to try and make sure that the actual shooter get life, because I feel like he should be, my brother deserves justice. And the judge told me if I didn't come in and do my witness statement, he would have never thought of it. I told the judge, I said, it's not fair how he's saying that he's a product of his environment and stuff. We live 2 blocks away from each other. Everybody have choices. It's no way he should be out being free, enjoying his child's life before I become a doctor.
Right.
We gave our life to the same thing. I gave my life to college and school, and you gave your life to a gang, and you able to be free before me.
Very interesting concept, and it's such a good point, because it gives you all the angles and the different perspectives as to how that goes. And you wanted to say something.
I wanted to say to you as a mother, I have a daughter, and that was really, really true what you said, where you said that I didn't see my daughter until I started this support group. It is not a curriculum, it's a heart matter. So you come in, you talk like you talk, and we have this chit chat. But what I want to share with you is what we say. Because I heard you from my heart, was like, nobody hurt you. So I want to say, if all of us could say we hear you, it's very important, because it's like a weird thing when you lose someone and there's no, like, it's quiet in a room like this. But when you interact with the women and the people who come on the Zoom, we say, we hear you. The reason why we say we hear you, you see those tears coming down? That's the reason why we say we hear you, because you have not been heard by the heart, by your tears. So if everybody could just say it right here in this group, you gotta say it. Say it, guys, say we hear you.
Yeah. We hear you.
Say it again.
We hear you.
Say it again.
We hear you.
How you feel?
I feel good.
We hear you.
And with that,
I hear you.
that's what we teach on Tuesday nights. It's just like, come in the group. I don't care what kind of day you're having, but I also want to tell you this. We also say this to the model that we use, is be kind enough to listen. Everyone has a voice and a story to tell. So I want to tell you from a mother, not your mother, but just a mother, I hear you. Do I understand? No. And that's what's important, that you stay in your lane and allow people to breathe in the space in the name that they're in, your sister. So I don't understand that, but what I do know is that I heard you.
Thank you.
And that matters because everybody's experience is different. I'm certified in grief recovery. I actually took, our organization paid for 5 gang intervention workers to be certified in grief recovery. And the reason is, with all of the homeboys, you think about all the homeboys that you know that died and different things, there's a lot of grief involved in gang work and involved in being in a gang. There's a lot of death. And one of the things that we were taught in the certification process is that you can never say to somebody, I know how you're feeling. And the reason you can't say that is because everybody's relationship is different.
Yeah.
You lost your son. I know other women that have lost their sons, but the experience is totally different because the relationship between you and your son and between them and their son is totally different. And the sibling, like you say, is a totally different experience because you had a relationship, and if you have other sibling,
Yeah.
the experience that they have
So
in relationship to losing your brother is going to be different even
Right.
than what your experience is.
So it's very different because
Mm.
our dynamic is different.
Yes.
So me and my brother, we grew up together. Our mother is absent, so I took on the mom role all the time.
Ah,
So like when my brother died, a lot of people was like, "Man, Asia, you lost your son," like, cause I was always the mom. So it was like it was really hard. Now my little sister, when I went away for college, my brother was like her dad. You know, even though my dad is present, you know, like my dad is able and stuff, but my dad works 3 jobs to take care of all of us. So
okay.
my brother is like taking her to school, doing all the stuff I used to do. So the dynamics kind of shift. Like he took over my role, and I was still going to school trying to, you know, make something of myself. So it was like I had a kind of guilt factor because I felt like when I was home, I would make sure my brother was doing what he was supposed to do. Like, Justin, don't hang out over there. Don't do that. You know, like, because it's always, I will always tell him, it's always the innocent people who the bullets get hit. Like, every time we be at a party, the party gets shot up. I'm like, Justin, it's always the innocent people. It's never the gang members that get hit. It's always the people who just going for a good time and always end up getting hit. And like, it was always something on my chest. Like, I promise you, the night before my brother got killed, I said the prayer of Psalm 91. I'll never forget this. And I was like, God, please, please, just give my brother a warning sign to let him know that he outgrew those friendships. Because I outgrew my friendships. Like, one of my friends got killed at the park, and I was like, okay, that's it. Like, I'm done. Like, I gotta get out of this city because we grew up in this neighborhood, and it's really taking us one by one. So I used to pray that my brother, like, just see it. Like, God, just let him see that we outgrowing this. Like, this is not who we are, and we gotta stop hanging around certain people because it's always those. And true enough, I get the call and I don't answer because I'm like, Justin want me to do his college work again, so I'm not gonna answer. Then I get another call and I'm like, what the heck? Like, he blowing me up. So I answered, and it's somebody he was hanging out with telling me, hey, it's not looking too good. Your brother got shot 3 times on Western and whoop. And I'm like, what? Like, so I just automatically hang up the phone. I start praying. I say, okay, this is the warning sign that I thought God was sending. You know, I'm like, okay, this is the sign. Like, all right, he got shot. He gonna be okay. This is just letting him know that his friends not his friends. You know, like, they put you in bad situations. Because if they're really your friends, they're not gonna tell you to hang out on the corner. They're not gonna tell you. You know, so like, come on. So I'm thinking he's gonna be okay. Next thing you know, my dad told me, like, they're not letting me go see Justin. Once I identified him, it's a murder scene. So it's a homicide. You can't go in. You can't do nothing. There's blood all on the floor. Now this is a crime scene. So I was like, wow, like, going just like that. Like, on a Sunday morning. Like, this is, we ain't at night. You know, this broad daylight.
Right.
Crazy. Like,
Well, and I want to, when you talk about a Sunday morning, one of the most deadly times in any jurisdiction is early Sunday morning,
Wow.
between midnight on a Saturday and sunrise on a Sunday.
Yeah, that's when Daryl was, he died on a Sunday, March 3rd,
Mhm.
1991.
And it's if you think about it, coming out the club, then it had the drinks, they on full,
Not
the,
bad.
the after party,
Thank you.
and all of those things are happening all at the same time, and and people are, because one of the other things that's important to recognize too, most crimes, at least 90% of crimes, there is some form of substance involved, meaning either the victim or the perpetrator were on a substance. There was 90% of all crimes. There's somebody that was intoxicated. And so from Saturday night, it's on and cracking, right? Because see, Friday, some of those people might have been at work during the day, but Saturday they could drink all day long,
Right.
get high all day long, whatever substances that there were. And by this time of night, early in the morning is when a lot of deaths and things occurred.
Wow.
So I want to say, I think it's really important that we're having this conversation, because I know other young people don't think about the impact on the sibling. I can say I was a member of the mayor's crisis response team, and what we started doing, because we do know that they're affected, is we began to notify the LAUSD when there was a liaison that was created, so that they can notify the school that this young person, either they experienced trauma because either they witnessed it or those kinds of things. I know in affluent neighborhoods, if there's a crime, they will have the counselors, grief counselors and stuff come to the school immediately. In the hood, they don't do that.
No.
You can walk past crime scenes all day. They expect our kids to just walk past and just tough it out as if somehow we don't have feelings and we're not. But in affluent neighborhoods, they provide grief counseling immediately on scene. But what we did start doing through the crisis response team is notifying the liaison, who will notify the counselor to the school, because it doesn't all happen at one time. So once the funeral is over and all of the big things are over and things that's when you begin to see the kids begin to act out, because now they have had time for the grief to settle in.
Exactly.
And the reality that, oh no, this is final, this is for real.
Yeah.
And there's no coming back.
Yeah.
And then they begin to act out in school, but that will lead, when there's no conversation about it, just to suspensions or expulsions, which literally is not gonna fix what the problem is. It doesn't even acknowledge that something happened, where we should be, as we say, what's wrong with you, as opposed to asking what happened to you.
Yeah.
What happened? What caused you to turn all of a sudden? Where if you realize you had a student who was doing great and constantly there and all those things, and all of a sudden they're missing class, or they're sleeping in class, or they're doing all sorts of other things at this time, why are you not asking what happened? And why are you not asking how do we fix this, or that kind of a thing? Because we don't ask, because again, in our communities, people of color are expected to just put up with everything and do, and be able to just keep moving forward. Yes.
I also think it's the lack of mental health awareness as well. Because,
Yes.
like me personally, as a sibling who faced this, I was strong for my dad. So I didn't cry at the funeral. I didn't really, I guess, regurgitate or eat it, swallow it when it all happened. Because I was like, man, my dad lost his wife. He lost his parents. Now he burying his son. Sheesh. Let me try to just be there for him, seeing him cry over his son. It was like, oh my God, this is something else. I'm trying to be there for my sister. Man, my sister don't have nobody now. When I go back to school, she's by herself. I had so much other stuff on my plate that I wasn't able to grieve. So I found myself grieving maybe a year or 2 years after, and it was over something crazy too. I was pouring a bowl of Frosted Flakes, and if you the youngest or the middle child, you clean up everything. So I always used to have to clean up after my siblings every time they make their breakfast or whatever. And one thing my brother used to do that disturbed my peace was he would overflow his bowl and know it's gonna fall and just act like, nothing. The cereal drops on the floor, it'd be always 3 drops. And for some reason this morning it happened to me and I just broke down, and I was in Arizona by myself and I just was like breaking down, like, and I just didn't know like how to respond to it, because depression isn't something that you constantly know about, isn't something that we experience. So when I was going through the motions, I was like, what is this? Like, what am I feeling? I'm trying to communicate it to my dad, and it was hard for me to put it into words, because I'm just like, Dad, I just can't focus. Like, ever since this happened, I just can't get it together. I'm trying to study, my mind just goes blank. I'm trying to figure it out. Now I'm breaking down crying. I can't eat. I can't, all these type of things. And then what really like made matters worse was when stuff is publicized, the shade room and stuff like that. So I feel like that's why I wasn't able to kind of, I guess, heal when it all happened, because I was getting bombarded, because you know how social media is. So
Yes.
people started tagging me. They assumed that I was the news got it, and my dad never talked to the news. So they didn't know me and him was siblings at first. So they put us as relationship or something, and the shade room got it, and people are sending me messages saying that like it became a race thing once Cameron Terrell, the white man, he got off for a $5.9 million bill. He had got off. His parents had got him out of jail, and the 2 black boys were still in jail. And this is from Jesse Owens Park. This boy is driving from Palos Verde to come to Western Century to gangbang. And yeah, so it was like a big racial thing, because everybody's like, he went back to school that same day once he got off the murder charges. So, the parents at the school is like, how is this happening? I'm going to school with a murderer and stuff like this. So they're now, those students who's his friends is attacking my inbox on social media and Instagram, saying your brother deserves to die, he's a black monkey, and all this type of stuff. He's probably a gangbanger, like, all this stuff. So I wasn't able to react. I'm just like eating it up. I'm like, let me delete the app, let me do, so I'm just blocking it all out, not really going through the motions. So when 2 years later happened, it just broke me
The floodgates.
down. Yeah, it just,
the floodgates. Because you have been holding all of that in addition to being re-traumatized.
Right.
Constantly re-traumatized over and over and over again. And we don't often realize, and this is what I would say to anybody out there listening, it does matter and it is hurtful when you begin to attack people. I think about the people, the parents of Sandy Hook, whose children, 6-year-old kids died, and this man, started getting out there saying, oh, that didn't really happen, and they made this up and those kinds of things. These are people, there are people on the other end of your keyboard. There are people's lives that are on the other end of your keyboard. And whatever you type actually does have an effect. And just trying to navigate the constant bombardment and those things, and people can easily say to you, well, just ignore that stuff, don't read it.
It's like
Don't look at it.
Head. Like, I close my eyes at night, I'm seeing the comments. It's like, it's crazy, because this is stuff that I've never really talked about, because like I said, I went to a public white institution, so my roommates are white. They don't understand this. I tell my teachers that I'm going home, my brother was murdered. They're like, you should stay there. Like, this isn't a place for people who go through things like that. And I'm like, you serious? Like, they're telling me like, oh, I can't give you the quiz passwords that you gonna miss. Like, it's not a place for people like you. Like all this stuff. So it's like, you getting stung from every area.
Wow.
So it was just like really hard.
Go ahead.
Man, first of all, my condolences to you and your brother. I am familiar with that, and I remember, hearing about that. But what's hitting me so hard right now is hearing that someone of a European race, as I'm hearing it, came from somewhere else to come to Jesse Owens Park and attempt to kill Trice. And in that attempt, he killed your brother who was innocent. So that's what I'm here fighting against. Like, it's a history and history, generations and generations. We just talked about this at the beginning about how this war even started. So now you have people coming from other states, other races, and as a black man, and other black men who are from that community or in whatever community that they come from, if you have your heart that you hate your fellow black man that much to where you would allow a white man to come into our community and kill our people, is a different kind of sickness.
But I want to stop you right there and say this, because the sickness was inbred a long time ago, and that same sickness, it was just a different variety of it that you suffered, that you lived with. It was a sickness, because the sickness is the mentality in the first place. Because when you think about it, when different gangs go to different places to retaliate against other gangs, that's what that is. And oftentimes, let me say this too, the one thing I know is that they're not going to the range and learning how to, shoot. So the bullets don't have any aims. They don't, you know what I'm saying? A lot of times they missing, right? My dad was an avid hunter. My dad took me to the range with him on a regular basis, right? I learned how to reload ammunition and all that kind of stuff. But there was some, you had to learn some things. He taught us some things. Well, the reality is that most people, kids, think about a 10, 11, 13, 14-year-old kid for the first time with a gun, and some of those big guns that they're using, 9mm, 357s and all that, they don't know nothing about what they're doing. And so this is why innocents get killed. But the sickness is so intense and is so inbred in what I'm constantly trying to get people to understand is that everybody, there are going to be those of us that can overcome it, that can get past it. You would be an example at this point at some level of someone, because see, you could have turned to anger and you could have got put on so you can go retaliate and all of those kinds of things, but that wasn't what you chose. But that's one exceptional person that made an exceptional choice. That doesn't always happen. Everybody doesn't have the psychological, the constitution to overcome the hurt and the pain and not get involved.
I think the hardest part is, and a lot of people don't bring this part up, but the court. When you go to court after whatever happened, whether it's gang violence, gang shooting, gang murder, whatever the case is, you guys all gotta get on an elevator together to go downstairs.
Ooh.
You
Right?
getting on the elevator with the shooter, the shooter's lawyer, your family's lawyer. You guys are all getting out. The only time they separated is if it's major gangs and they know the police have to be there. And not to mention, you got the media there too. So the media is there trying to get you a statement after you just went through the harshest thing in your life, trying to get justice for your loved one who's not here to speak up for himself. And going through that is like, I feel like that was the most traumatic experience of it all, because you relive it every time you go to court.
Absolutely.
And court is not a 3-day process. It's not as quick as the funeral. Court is years long. My brother got killed in October 2017. We're still going to court to this day. And this is trial after trial after trial, because each person has to go through a trial. So it's like, yeah, we lost with Cameron Terrell, but we still have Lawrence Boyd. We still have, every person who was involved, you have to go to trial with. So like, just being that, and not to mention, I've seen the shooters fought there at the grocery store. We live in the same neighborhood, so it's just like, it's so many angles of it that people forget to mention. And like, I have to be honest with myself, I've never realized how humbling this situation has made me, because like she said, the candlelight, like when you drive down the street and you see those things, and if your family isn't a part of gangs, you automatically think that's for gang members. That's not, you know, that's not for everybody, you know, because when your grandma died, you don't do a candlelight.
No.
You never
That's
see
a
that.
valid point.
That's
So-
right.
So that was my first candlelight ever. My grandma used to say, when our friends used to get killed or something, and they have a candlelight, my grandma was like, you ain't going out there, you know. So me being a part of that scene now, you know, it's just like
Yeah.
it's just so much to swallow that people don't mention, you know. And it's like it's humbling, but at the same time, it opens your eyes to see like this is really what the world do. Because you know how many times I pass by and it's like 3 candlelights on one block.
And then the candles are left there afterward.
Yeah.
And like we were gonna say something.
Oh, no, I was just alluding to the point that she had made about, you know, the effects. Like she said, she's not a gang member, her family is not a gang member, her brother wasn't a gang member.
Right.
But, you know, we grow up together, you know, I remember a dude named Renard. He wasn't a gang member. I was in 7th grade. It's the first time I had experienced a shooting. I was 13, and the car I was in was shot up, you know, over 20 something times. But I survived, like wasn't hit or nothing, right? But I'm entering into this gang life. You know, I wasn't no saint at that point. You know, so that was expected. You know, I'm like, okay, so now my mind is where it is retaliation now. Okay, we're gonna you know, they missed, let's go. But that wasn't the case for Renard. The same dudes that shot at us, they caught him walking home and killed him. He was not a gang member.
He just lived in the
my
neighborhood.
friends who was gang member, we all knew him, and he would come and talk to us here and there, but he never involved in that. So, and in that sense, right there, you know, the family is left with no question, with no answers to their questions. They're looking for justice, you know, from rightfully so, in the hope that someone will be rightfully convicted of this. But there's another element to it, to where they don't get the information of why would a person want to even come kill. So they don't understand the history of why these communities are warring with each other, or understanding the effect that it has on, and we don't get that in there. Like right now in these communities, there's no one with the checks and balances to even entertain that, where if someone dies and you know that whether this person was a gang member or he wasn't, got caught up in this, I feel that it's a duty of that community to explain to that family the dynamics of what went on. Like Miss Yvonne, you know, it's the responsibility of it, even though his friends killed him, is he got other friends. They didn't mean just his only friends.
Right.
But to give that family some understanding of, you know, back in 1979, this happened over female, you know, it's been worn ever since. So, you know, it is probably likely that your loved one died because of the history, the bad blood between these two communities that's been going on for 45 years, right? So the family can get some type of understanding, okay, this is the reason why this, you know, and then we try to find healing and resolve, not only from the courts, but in the community as well. Like, how do we come to terms? How do we come to terms with each other?
Not to cut you off, but I just feel like the biggest thing is that young people see gangbanging as a rite of passage. Like, they see it as, this is what I'm gonna become. And I mean, I'm not to say that I never looked at that, because I've had older cousins who've been in out the game system, out the jail system and stuff. And I mean, honestly, it does look lavish at a point, because guess what? All gamers, they fit it. They got money, they got the coolest phones. So when you're a kid, me at 8 years old, I'm like, yeah, I wanna be like my big cousin, her. She's popping, she gets to go out all the time,
Right.
She has the coolest, you know, all those type of things. So like, if your parents not there, or you don't have an OG behind your back letting you know that this ain't the lifestyle you want to live,
Absolutely.
it's kind of unclear, you know. Like, and like the kids who killed my brother, they were kids. My brother died right after his 21st birthday, and the people who killed him was 16 and 15 and 18.
Wow. Wow.
See?
So it's like, it's ridiculous. Like, at a point, of course, I hated those people at the time because it was like, y'all deserve, like, y'all the ones who gave y'all life to the gang system, or, you know, whatever. And I don't mean to be inconsiderate.
No,
I
you're
really
good, you're
apologize.
No, it's okay.
But
It's
you know,
okay.
like, those was my mindset at the time. Because,
Absolutely.
you know,
Yeah.
when you sign up for a gang, you know what you're signing up for.
Yeah.
Like, we can't help that we live in a trade neighborhood. Like, and it's something simple as going to put your kids in Pop Warner at your local park, or putting your kids in Pop Warner in Culver City. It's something that simple, because
Yes.
when you go through Pop Warner system, you with those kids day and night. We going to practice every night at that park. You know, so it's like something that simple as him going to Pop Warner in Culver City, a different neighborhood where gang violence isn't up to par, could have changed his life, because those would have changed the people he would have been around. Because we didn't go to school in our neighborhood, you know. So something that simple, us not being able to go outside, could have changed that, you know, that lifestyle.
That dynamic.
Yeah. And it's just crazy like that. And I feel like people don't shine a light on how mesmerizing people make gang life seem.
Well, and I want to,
Until
and
the
it's,
end, of course.
Yeah.
and it's such a valid point, because I want to talk about the systemic nature of our country and what they do. So I know a lot of people in the music industry, and they will glorify and they will promote a lot of the music right now, particularly rap music and stuff like that, is literally talking about drugs, lean, Molly, Percocets. I couldn't believe I was listening to a song on the radio, Molly Percocet. I was like,
Yeah,
what
it's
the?
crazy, right?
Like, really, this is what you're promoting? But and so people say, well, why isn't there any positive rap music? I can tell you why. Because when people do it, they don't promote it. It would sell. It would sell, but the industry very specifically decided that they were going to promote this kind of music. I know people in the industry who were part of those conversations, that this was a conscious choice. This wasn't like, oh, it just happened and this is the only thing we want to listen to. And so therefore, I know of a group of young guys who were doing really, really well. They played Pop Warner football for me, as a matter of fact. They had a great group, getting a lot of buzz on their own. Sony Records picked them up, signed them, and shelved them.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were positive.
They
They
don't
were
get a
not
record
talking
deal.
about
They're not
drugs,
talking about that?
but what they did is they gave them a record deal and then shelved them and wouldn't promote their music and wouldn't let them put out. They haven't had an EP out since they got signed with Sony.
Wow.
That I know anything about.
Yeah.
So the thing is that there are the systemic things that happen.
What I don't understand, and maybe 'cause I'm white, but I listen to the rap where they talk about women are this and they're that, and I'm looking at this car, and they got their mom and their dad, and they got these two little kids in the back,
Bumping their heads,
Yeah.
bumping their heads.
and I'm thinking, how can you teach that kid to respect a woman, and you're sitting up there teaching them a song to disrespect them?
And the thing of it is, it's the beat. It's the beat. And they put anything to a beat. Oh yeah, it's the beat. Oh yeah. And popping their fingers. I can tell you one of the things where I think started the biggest disrespect between black men and black women. One of my favorite songs, Poison. Never trust a big butt and a smile. What black woman you know ain't got a big butt and a smile? Really? But listen, we was in the club, we was bumping, we was breaking it, backing it up and all that to Poison.
We're our own worst enemy.
Listen, it was programmed to be that way. I like to say, black people in particular, we are an experiment that went extremely well. It produced the results that were the desired results.
Back from Willie Lynch.
Absolutely, and all of that, those things went into it. And so yes, we have done a lot of those things to ourselves, and we continue to be those things. And oftentimes in the community, one of the things that you talked about that it makes me think about is what it looks like. And we don't see that there are other opportunities for us. We're not exposed to going to the beach all the time and the possibility of the STEM learning and the things that inspire you to want to be a doctor.
Which is true, and I feel like that's why our neighborhoods fall short the way they do. And like I give back to my community, like kind of like how you said you experienced a loss, and the only thing you can do at that point,
Yeah.
you can't get the person back. So
Yeah, right.
you just try to prevent other people. So like when I talk at Jackie Tatum Harbor Park, and I love to tell people like a lot of times we think our limit stops at what our parents did for us. Like,
Yes.
cause a lot of people where we come from, our parents didn't go to college. Our parents
Right.
had us young. You said you had your son at 15. My mom had my brother when she was like 18.
Mhm.
You know, so it's like you start these families young, and you think you do right by getting married, getting a house, you know, stuff like that. But it's also more things as to what you introduce to your children. And a lot of parents don't introduce things to their children, but it's not because they don't want to, it's because they don't know.
That's right. That's right. For example, one of the things that I will tell you that it burns my butt, and that is when I see parents dressing the kids in the hood attire with the plaid shirt, khakis. You know what I'm saying? Don't be laughing over there. I see you over there chuckling. Right, because you know what I'm talking about.
I've never put
Right,
you know,
but you know what that is, right? You know there are people who
but
dress.
They do.
They dress their kids, and then they start giving them nicknames,
Yeah.
and those things travel. Those things carry. And I wanna, what I wanna do, I'm sure we got to be coming up close on time.
Yeah.
But what I want to do is I want to give hush. Look. What I want to do is I want to come to you, Miss, and I want to give you an opportunity to reflect. Any reflections? This is called our checkout, our closeout, where any reflections of anything that stood out to you during this conversation this evening, ma'am.
I would just like to say to Yvonne, thank you. Thank you for coming forth and in your healing other people. Thank you for coming forth and stepping out of the grief, even though the grief is still surrounding you, but to step out because you're gonna heal. That's how you guys are gonna heal, is stepping out to help other people. And thank you so much. Thank you for the story, and I'm sure you'll be back to tell the rest.
Yes. Any final thoughts from you, sir?
I found out that it's a small world. It's not really, you know, and that the issues that I'm faced with in my community are bigger than what you know, than I anticipated. You know, and, but it's surreal to hear someone that I don't know come forward with these stories of my community, and things that happened that I didn't know that was directly connected to my community. Because, and you know why I didn't find out that it was connected to my community, because it was an innocent person. That person was your brother was not
affiliated.
So
in other words, so what I hear you saying is because he wasn't on the hood, you guys didn't even understand that it was related to being and living in your hood, and that ultimately you never even got the word.
You never even get the word that, you know, I remember seeing all this on the news.
And had no idea.
And the story behind it, the white guy getting out and the black kids having to go through the case. I mean, everybody, and I didn't even know that it was these two communities.
Wow.
You know, because you know, we didn't talk about that because it wasn't.
It turned into a race thing.
It turned into a race thing.
You know,
and again, the community in which it came from and the community that you was in, totally oblivious to that, because the mindset is still stuck on the gang shit and not even looking at the bigger picture that race is involved in this.
Well, I feel like the neighborhood, of course, it ain't going nowhere because you don't get props for killing an innocent person. So the neighborhood didn't get it. The media, of course, they took it and ran with it. Like a girl, and it's so funny how the media works, because a girl was just murdered in front of my house, right? And the news did not take sight. The FBI, I couldn't get into my house for hours because you know you can't get in. It's a crime scene, it's a murder scene. So It was a black girl. No news coverage at all. But my brother only got news coverage because innocent people die in LA, South Central LA, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason why I got news coverage was because it was a white man coming from Palos Verdes gangbanging at Western and Century. He was driving a black man. You know, that's the only reason. Your son maybe didn't get news coverage.
Yeah.
Or, you know, of course, because this happens all the time. The only reason why my brother was publicized and this incident was publicized was because it was just so dynamic. Like, he would have, my brother would still be living had this man, Cameron Terrell, stayed in PV.
We would stayed in Palos Verdes.
Right. These black kids don't have a means of a car.
Right.
They don't have
He's
a
on
means.
video.
They don't have, you know, they don't have these guns. They, you know, like, so all this stuff could have been prevented, you know, and I say this just to say that it's so funny how you say the world is so small and stuff like that. It's just, these things happen all the time. Like, you're grieving, I'm grieving, everybody's grieving from something, but it's just not publicized. And a lot of times we just see, because like I said, the news got the most gang affiliated picture of my brother. You know, they made sure they didn't get none of the pictures of him in the suit. You know, they didn't get none of the pictures. They got him pictures in jeans, shirts, what is Air Forces, you know. And like I said, a lot of people say, if you look like a duck, you walk like a duck, it's a duck, you know.
And he was not.
He wasn't, you know. But that's the way they publicize things, and you know, they put us out, and it's like, it's so crazy because I believe the guy who killed my brother, they said, this was literally his written report. He said, the dude looked like he was from A-Tray. He had on all white Air Forces, a white tee. And when I asked him where he was from, he said he didn't bang, but he was trying to be a hero. And I feel like any black man who grew up in that neighborhood who know this is a little kid talking to him. And my brother Hans was registered. He was a boxer. So he looking at the little dude like, I'm about to knock you out. Like, you trying to gangbang on me? And I grew up in this neighborhood, you know, like, so a gun come out, and like you said, they don't have.
No, the bullets don't have names.
Bullets don't have names. It's like, it's just funny to me how these things happen all the time, and it's not publicized, it's not pictured, and these things need to be like in textbooks. This is stuff that people need to learn about, because your kids is growing up, they need to know this, you know, like, and a lot of times, and I'll just say this be my last comment.
No.
Parents, you know, they be so consumed on the kid that left that they don't pay attention to the kids that's still here. And I'll just give you that advice coming from a kid who lost their sibling and their parents kind of forgot. Like, my little sister, she went through a whole little thing because, you know, the parents, you know, it's trauma, you know, like, because it's like, how can I say, Dad, my birthday coming up? You know?
Right.
Through all of this.
Right.
And he's crying his eyes out because his child is murdered.
Right.
I want to give you an opportunity. Any last comments for you other than your...
Yeah. I wish everybody was green.
Right. It would be easier.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
I get, you know, because I get offended sometimes because I hear the white man did this, and I'm thinking, I didn't do shit. You know what I mean? Never had done, you know.
But I want you to understand this. It's not about you.
I know that, but it still bugs me.
Well, get over that, because I'm gonna say this, and the reason I say that is this. I say that because our reality is that this is what actually happens. In other words, her brother's murder really literally only did.
Who recruited that white dude?
I don't.
Did
But
anybody
wait.
ever ask that?
But wait. I don't know. But this is what I want to say to you, though, sweetie. I want you to understand this. It's not about. It's not about you. It is about the fact that.
Well, I know they're not talking about me personally.
Right.
But
I want you
get
to.
so tired of the brown race, the black race, the white race. I wish everybody was green.
It would be a lot better. But I can tell you that the biggest challenge is that our reality, the reality of how this country functions, particularly when you go into the criminal justice system, is different. And like you said, you've said to us before, you believe that one of the reasons they went so hard on you was because you were white and they could get a conviction, long conviction of a white man. So that they can then look at that and say, and put that up and say, see, we do it to white people too. Right. Well, yeah, but but by and large, our reality is the system is not fair to us. There is no justice in the system for us typically. It just doesn't
If
exist.
you ain't got the money, you going to prison.
And that is another
That's
thing.
it.
That is another thing. That is
Who
another
has money?
element. That is another element that
You
matters.
gotta look at that too. Like, who has money? Usually, the
He
people
didn't
who
have
have
no money, that's why he went to prison.
And that's why he went to
No,
prison. But
I
I want to make sure that the point is clear. That I can tell you what you just said is the ultimate, and that is money talks and bullshit walks.
Yep.
Well, in this case, no, money walks and bullshit talks. Because the reality is that if you are, one of the reasons that people were so upset about O.J. Simpson getting off is because black people typically don't get off from stuff like that. He just happened to have enough money to hire the investigators and hire the people and all those expert witnesses and things like that, that he was able to prove that they had done some things, right? But white America was not accustomed to black people being able to beat those kind of charges and to beat those kinds of things. So the reality is I ask you to find it in yourself to not take it personal, right? To not feel like it has, because it is, the reality is valid. Anytime you have a judge or you have a prosecutor standing up and saying,
Well, I wish they would say a rich white person.
Well, but the reality is,
poor
white
white ain't getting.
they don't
crap.
have nothing coming. It's just like, and listen, and that's the truth. The you know, because what wealthy white people did is to convince poor white people that black people, minorities, and immigrants are their problem and the reason why they don't have anything. And they've convinced them. I have friends, I listen to people that I know that literally they support with everything they have white people who support poor white people, who support like the Donald Trumps, like all in, but they have convinced them for years that others are their problem, and so therefore they begin to support that even against their own best interest.
It's like
And
Hitler.
it's and that's what it is. And so, you know, like I say to you, I appreciate that you're here and that you speak up and you tell your truth. I just want you to understand that our reality is what it is.
Yeah.
And she's right. There wouldn't have been any coverage of his murder had it not been for that dynamic of that young man being a white man from Palos Verdes who was able to post a $5.9 million bond and all of that. There wouldn't even be a conversation about him. And so there is that dynamic, and it does matter. And I'm grateful that you feel comfortable enough. I know you well enough to know it's going to happen either way, but you say what you think.
I always say
And I
what I
appreciate that. I want to give you an opportunity. Anything that stood out to you tonight?
No, not really.
Okay. I'm going to give you the last word.
Lot. The word is lot. Hello to
A
you.
lot.
I know we don't have time, so I have to come back for your second segment.
Yes.
I just want to say that to you, baby, to you, from me to you, you are amazing. From me to you, keep doing what you're doing, and the process will show itself. How it shows itself, I don't know. But I want to tell you that your voice is important. Keep doing it. There's a sun that's going to shine one day. And I just want to say that it was truly a blessing. My heart is just like overflowing for her, because I do have my only daughter. And when I see you as a daughter, see you as a queen.
Thank you.
See you as that you've been through some trauma, but that's not the end of it. That's just the beginning for your new life. So my word to you as we hear you. I love that word now. I love it. I love it. I love it. Look at you. I love it. I want to say that it was truly an honor and a privilege, and I really want to come back.
Absolutely.
And I thank the cameraman, I thank everybody, but what I want to say to the mothers out there, don't be afraid to tell your truth. When you look in the mirror, it's what you really see. How you deal with it is another way. How you have to deal with it is your truth. I just told my truth. I pray that it touches somebody out there. I pray that it reaches somebody to say, you know what, I see it. I gotta get it help. I gotta get myself help. But the first help is me. The first help is me. And in that first help, I'm talking about me, because some people may be at a different part of where they're at with this, and that's where you're gonna be. But as far as me, Yvonne, I just say that I had to come to myself first. You cannot come to anything else until you come to yourself. And in myself, the healing began with crying, screaming, cussing, yelling. You'll find all of that in your circle. But at the end, the truth that you lay on the table is going to help someone else. It doesn't discredit your son. It doesn't discredit his life. What it makes you do is be responsible to help somebody else. See, because there's a lot of young youth, when I'm sitting in this circle, it's a lot of young people out here that need to hear, no, I see your shoes, I see your hat, I see that money, I see that car, I see you up all night, coming home early in the morning. When we do that, we are the people of the community. We are the mother's voices. We are the people who will walk in the light and say, you know what? I'm gonna help change this if I just give one. It starts with one, but it starts with self first, and that's telling your truth. So like I said, I'm Yvonne Trice, a mother's voice. I have a Tuesday reoccurring Zoom. There's no curriculum. This is a heart matter. I don't know nothing about the paperwork. I know the heart. So I just want to share that with you guys and say it was a pleasure being here.
And can you tell everybody how they can find you on social media?
Yes, they can go to Yvonne Trice. He just put me on blast like that. They can go to Yvonne Trice. My email address is yvonnetrice1961@gmail.com. Phone number 909-630-1887. I'm just asking for us to come together in unity and peace. No matter where you come from, no matter who it is, when your baby leave here, we are all in the same kind of walk. We on the same ride. So let's stop this. Let's recreate to procreate. I just want to say something to you. I want to say I appreciate you, and you matter, and you've been a big in my ear, and in my ear with both my brothers. Was I never knew what really started this. So today, almost 7 years now, my son's been gone, and I'm sitting down, and I was anxious to get here last week, but it was some kind of holiday. I was like, can the holiday get off? I gotta get here Thursday. And then I saw what God wanted me to see. Cause you guys are a mirror of what I didn't understand as a mother, and not even realizing the trauma you guys had went through, and coming back to be able to be the heroes and be able to sit here and just be real is the biggest blessing I could have had tonight. So thank you both.
I've always been out, but you know what? I'm thankful I'm old. I'm not gonna tell no lie. I am glad
I'm glad to be 60.
I survived. That's the
I'm
only thing
glad
I
to
want to
be
do
60.
is survive prison.
Wow.
And then get out here and I'm old and I'm happy.
Yeah.
All right.
No, I am.
That's good.
And I just want to thank all of you for watching. Please share the information. Incarceration affects everybody. Pulling your brother out of the community had ripple effects. Pulling you out of the community, even though you were a gang member, had ripple effects on your family. Pulling your son out, pulling all of you guys. When this happens, it affects everybody. It affects more than just the person that was incarcerated or the person who was murdered. And like you said, I think it's such a valid point, is that the people who, the perpetrator as well as the victim, all of those families suffer. They all suffer. It is immense. It is the constant pulling the scab back. And one of the things that I want to say, Pike, is every time it happens again, that another person is let off and gets away, another white person gets away with the murder of a black person. When you see the judges doing things like the judge in the Kyle Rittenhouse matter, doing things that will help to exonerate this man, not because of anything other than the color of his skin, and valuing his life more than that of black people. when that
But he didn't
happens,
shoot any black people.
no, he didn't.
That, that's all.
No, he
and
didn't.
That's something why this thing is rolling. That's one thing that bothers me. Like
Mm-hmm.
she said, as soon as white people become involved in the crime,
Then the media cares.
it makes massive amounts of news.
It does.
The other day, I watched that shit for the first time, and I'm watching BLM outside of the courthouse. What the fuck for? Kyle Rittenhouse shot white people.
He did.
They need to be here, not there. That's one case I don't give a shit about.
Right.
Is what that kid did.
Right.
What do we care about that for?
Well, I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna tell you why it matters. Because the association that they have with that is the fact that it was a Black Lives Matter protest, which is what caused him to leave, would cause him to leave where he lived, cross state lines to quote unquote protect property.
And that's
now
all
the
great.
mere fact.
But as soon as they found out that none of us got harmed by this white kid walking around with a fucking assault rifle, that's done. Use those resources that we have, which are very scarce, somewhere where we can make a difference, right?
Well,
it has
not
to be-
there.
It has to be addressed like that for the simple fact that the label of what it was incited his mind to go there and do that. So
And-
even though
But
he
you guys
did,
are looking at the video,
No,
for
no,
it, right?
even though-
How
yeah,
many
yeah,
black
but-
people did you
but-
guys see
no, but I'm saying, though,
in the
he did do
riot?
that.
There's not many.
but the rally was for Black Lives Matter, which
Yeah, yeah.
triggered him to go.
Which I get.
It wasn't Black.
But
Lives
for
And-
weeks I haven't been watching it. And I
Right,
sit
no.
down and watch a lot of the video, and there's more young white college age kids
Absolutely.
rioting, burning,
Absolutely.
turning over. So it's like, what do I care
But the
about
thing
Kenosha?
of it is that the tag is always that it was a Black Lives Matter protest, and there's
We gotta
always
focus.
this constant thing where people, and believe it or not, Caucasian people go to Black Lives Matter protests to start
They
shit,
agitate.
to agitate.
When this
to
camera
burn-
goes up,
because
I'm
in
gonna tell you
fact,
guys something.
because the other thing is if you whatever things that we did watch, there was a white guy trying to set a dumpster on fire, which is what kind of started the situation with Kyle. So the reality is that he was an agitator who wanted the Black Lives Matter protest to appear to be violent. And he was a white guy creating that
was already
scenario.
violent.
So what I'm saying is no, they weren't violent. The protests were not violent. What I'm talking about is the fact that you have people who go into those protests to do things.
That protest wasn't violent.
No, it wasn't until
There was no
they-
burning. There was no
Listen.
trashing. There was no shooting.
This-
There was no other people getting beat.
The
you
people-
looked at the videos?
I have, but the people who were the Kyle Rittenhouses were shooting. Okay, these were not the people who were just protesting. There was, when I told you, like I said, there was a white guy who went to go set off to try to set the dumpster fire.
Let him.
A lot of times, but Kyle Rittenhouse wasn't going to have that. What I'm saying is that a lot of times there's infiltration that happens to make Black Lives Matter protests look like it's all about looting and that kind of stuff, and it's not necessarily. Okay, so what happens is that the tag is there, so there's the notion of it. Where I have a problem just with the trial is the things that the decisions that the judge has made in that, and the things that he's doing to make sure that this young man is acquitted. He's done everything he can do to make sure that he gets acquitted. And partly because America came together,
for him.
white America came together and they started donating millions of dollars to his defense fund. Okay, because they see him and they have made him, those people who are racist have made him one of their poster boys
Martyr, yeah.
and a martyr. And if he's convicted, he'll be a martyr and all of those things. So this is what happens, and often we don't get the same thing. Even when you look at the January 6 people being prosecuted, the one man of color that got prosecuted got 14 months. No violence, no nothing. Everybody else is getting 60 days, right? So this is just the system that we're in. It is not about, it's systemic in the sense that we don't need each other they don't need to communicate with each other to know what to do when the situation comes. They know not to put, the media, for example, knew not to put your brother in his cap and gown
Right.
or in any of his graduation pictures or in a suit and tie.
Right.
They knew to portray him as an A-tray gangster, even though he never was. So they know what to do, and they don't need to sit down and have a conversation with each other about making that happen. So that's the systemic part of it. And there's nobody saying that white people need to feel guilty about, for example, about slavery. No, that's not the issue. But we cannot ignore the fact that it has had an effect, and the effects are still going on even to this day.
Yeah, but why not, like, you talk about acknowledge somebody. Who was it that got the black man legally to vote? It wasn't the blacks, it was the whites.
I think
Well,
what they're getting at is
Yeah,
that
but I'm just saying that, you know,
because
there's
you
a
have to
good
have
side.
whites come in because they're supporters. They see that this is wrong.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I'm gonna
Yes.
stand on what's right.
Principle.
So they stand with them. What we're saying is, with regards to systematic racism, is like the judge is doing right there to be able to
Yes.
minimize what it is that this child did. Now, on the flip side, when we going into court, they do that same method to ensure that our convictions stand.
Right. Like simple
That
things
same
like
tactic that he's doing for him to try to help him off is the same tactic that they doing across America to convict us to where we can't even appeal. He's making it where he can appeal. If he gets
Right.
convicted,
He'll have
he's gonna
appealable-
be back on appeal, got
Right.
appealable issues.
Right.
They make
So-
it where we can't do that.
and simple things like even referring to him as a young man or a teenager, where we're automatically at 14, this person, the perpetrator, and so there's a lot of that goes into it. But this is what I will say. Again, I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank you for watching, for paying attention. I want to thank you for your input. And these are conversations that will continue to happen at Free to Heal. What we're here about is trying to speak the truth so that we can heal from it. We're not interested in creating any people feeling bad and that kind of stuff. That's not what we're about. We're about healing from it. But the first thing that I have found when I have been offended is I need to acknowledge that I was offended first. I need to acknowledge the offense, acknowledge the wrong, because we can't go forward if we never even acknowledge what happened. There is no healing that can come from that. So I really want to say to you, baby, I appreciate you sitting here and listening to this, because we are a room full of black people, but
Yeah.
hell, it seemed to me like you ought to be used to that growing up in Compton. That's a whole nother issue. You know what I'm saying? It seemed to me like you ought to be used to it. The only one know what the straightening comb smell like.
Well, yeah.
I just want to say this again. I just want to thank all of you guys. This has been an extremely powerful conversation, and I thank you guys so much for joining us. And please join us again. Have a great night.